Hi, it's Dr. Lakia Wright. And sorry, about a minute or two late. I was having some technical difficulties here, but I'm just going to wait a couple minutes to have people log on. Again, Dr. Lakia Wright here, just waiting a couple minutes to have people log on. Okay, great. So I see some waves out there, so I'm happy to see people joining. And again, I'm Dr. Lakia Wright. I am a board-certified allergist and immunologist. I'm also medical director of U.S. Clinical Affairs in the Immunodiagnostics Division at Thermo Fisher Scientific. I always want to say, that's a mouthful whenever I give my title. And so welcome to Allergy Updates with Dr. Wright. So right now, Allergy Updates with Dr. Wright. And so today we're going to talk about allergies and masks. And so we really want to give you the 411 on that because it's been in the media, and we always want to highlight, the science behind some of these recommendations and see how it relates to allergies. And again, this live is really educational. So it's really information that I'm putting out there that you can use to talk to your doctor. It's not medical advice, but it can help facilitate a conversation with your medical provider. And so what we'll do is, we'll dive straight in. And so I'm going to go over the who, what, when, where, why, and how of allergies and masks. And really the question is, will masks help me with my allergies, those, pesky environmental allergies? So let's dive into the science. So, when we talk about allergies and masks, the thought behind that is if you're inhaling your allergens and you have a mask over your nose and your mouth, would that help decrease some of that allergen exposure? And the answer is yes. And so yay for another good reason to wear masks. And so let's go over the who, what, when, where, why, and how. And this is all based on, I knew this as an allergist and I would advise my patients on it, but we didn't have as many studies, and it's really because, mask wearing has been normalized during the pandemic. So we've been studying it more and saying, what else is it good for? It's a good reason to wear a mask to reduce exposure to viruses like SARS-CoV-2, COVID-19, but also those allergens. And so it can reduce exposure for allergens to both children and adults. And so that's good news there. I will say for children, when we're talking about these environmental allergies, it's particularly, these seasonal sort of spring or, we know spring is in the air now with the pollens. It takes a little while for younger children to develop the seasonal allergy symptoms. And that's because they need a few seasons of exposure. And so after a few years, you can see those symptoms, sort of pop up. And in children, I'll say that sometimes it's a little bit harder. So you might hear them sneezing, but then they'll also, sort of rub their nose, and then you can notice a crease. So it's sort of like a nasal crease, or even dark circles around the eyes that could all signal allergies. And then when it comes to adults, a common thing that I get asked about as an allergist is, well, I never had allergies before. So doctor, why am I getting them now? And so allergies, including environmental allergies, can come on at any point in life, even as an adult. If you didn't have them when you were younger, you could still get them as an adult. So we're talking about allergy sufferers. And then so the next question is, well, if masks help to reduce allergen exposures, then, what allergens are we talking about? So, spring is in the air, so we are talking about those pollens, but then also other allergens that are common. So you have, dust mites, cat, dog, let's see what else, mold, things like that. Those are common environmental allergens that you can get less exposure to by wearing that mask. And so the other question is, well, what type of mask? And so the studies that were recently performed were performed looking at N95 mask and surgical masks. So you might know the surgical mask as those masks that are blue, or sometimes they come in the yellow variety. They're pretty, I'll say thick, because the fibers are sort of interwoven. And so the reason that's important is because when the allergen is trying to get in, this interwoven fiber can block it. So it's, it's about reducing the amount of exposure to your allergens, those pesky pollens and other common environmental allergens as well. And so that's a little bit about, like how it's done. And, well, why would, the other question is, well, why wear a mask? And we know the answer to that is very clear, and there's a lot of evidence behind that. And so according to the CDC recommendations, we know that wearing a mask decreases your exposure to viruses, including SARS-CoV-2, which causes COVID-19. And now we see with these recent studies, it can reduce exposure to allergens, which we always sort of knew, but now we just have more data to support that. And then additionally, we see that also the mask wearing, and we're talking about surgical masks here with the interwoven fibers, those type of masks can also help reduce exposure to air pollution. So one of the questions that I get asked is, well, what about the N95 mask? And so that mask is really reserved for healthcare workers or industrial workers. So those surgical masks, based on the studies, are very effective. And prior to these studies, I would tell my patients all the time, if you're sort of outdoors for an extended period of time, mowing the lawn, working in your garden, then wearing a mask can help reduce exposures. And then also things like, it's spring, so you tend to do some spring cleaning, and then you're sort of, the dust can get into the air. You might be dusting and cleaning places that you haven't cleaned in a while. And so wearing a mask helps to reduce that exposure as well. So one question that I get asked too is like, well, is it going to completely block my allergen exposure? And the answer is no, but it can help reduce the amount of exposure. And with that reduction in exposure, the clinical studies, show that with that reduction in exposure, you can get a reduction in symptoms. And so that's really the goal. And even though you can get some sort of gaps here along the side when you're wearing a mask, or even a little bit, above the bridge of your nose, that's okay for a little bit of, allergens to, get in, because the majority of the allergens would be blocked, because you want to reduce the amount of exposure. And so I will say, if anyone has any questions, I'll feel free to, answer any of the questions out there if anyone has any. And if not, we can go into my every time I do this talk, I like to talk about Mythbusters, and so we can go into that section now. And so the first Mythbuster that I talk about is, single mask is the best, and double masking doesn't really, matter. And so that is really related to the fact that, we want to wear masks that have that sort of thicker, interwoven fabrics. And so the idea with double masking is you're creating a double barrier, so it makes it even harder for those viruses and allergens to get in. So double masking is good according to the CDC, and although not a lot of the studies have been done exclusively in allergens, we can extrapolate that would also help to reduce your exposure to allergens as well. And so another question I'm getting asked here is, do you recommend wearing eye coverings while doing spring cleaning in addition to the mask? Like, would glasses help a little bit in the same way if you have allergies? And that's absolutely right. I often have my shades on, and that's because wearing the shades can also serve as a physical barrier, and that's really important for those people who are allergy sufferers. In addition to having the nasal symptoms, they also have the eye symptoms. So that's absolutely right that the eye covering can help, whether it's exposure to pollens or, as mentioned in the question, exposure to cleaning when you're doing your spring cleaning. And then I'll check to see if there are any other questions out there. Okay, so I do have a question that I'm commonly asked, and it's sort of, related to this topic. People tend to ask, well, how do I tell the difference between allergies and COVID, and my environmental allergy symptoms and COVID? So we know that COVID can cause a lot of sort of systemic symptoms. So, they can cause symptoms outside of the nasal symptoms. And so if you have things like fever, allergies alone would not cause fever. Body aches, you get stomach upset, diarrhea. Those are all, signs and symptoms that there's, something more going on than your allergies. And so, because your allergies, remember, you can get a little stuffy nose, runny nose, and you could get those symptoms in COVID. The watery, itchy eyes tend to be more allergic in nature. And of course, you can have two things at once. So it is best to talk to your doctor about your symptoms, and likely your doctor, may recommend testing. But then, if you have the allergy symptoms, you can see signs like, it worsens when you go outdoors and the pollen counts are high. A lot of my patients like to monitor the pollen counts on on television as they're watching the weather, or even online. And then if you feel better after you take some over-the-counter, allergy medication like antihistamines, and sort of, you feel much better and your symptoms sort of go away, then that may, make it more likely that you have allergies or flaring your allergies. But it's always good to talk to your doctor about those symptoms. And then another question I get asked is, I understand what you're saying, Dr. Wright, about the advantages of wearing a mask and reducing exposure to allergens in addition to viruses, but my kids don't like to wear a mask. And so that brings me to my tips of the day. And so I know how hard it is to get children to wear a mask, and I have a toddler myself, and I thought, it's no way that my 2-year-old is going to wear a mask. But actually, she shocked me, and I think it was because she saw me wearing a mask, and then also I included her as much as possible in the process of wearing the mask. So I made sure that I purchased a variety of masks, had a variety of masks for her to choose from. And then, of course, just like with adults, the children find attractive too, the colors, the fact that the mask can be sort of a fashion statement. So bright colors are, I find, always a hit with children, even in certain segments and age groups. Having the bling and then even characters. And I would say this is not exclusive to children, because even adults, they can get a little whimsical with their mask as well. And then making it part of their daily routine so that, they can choose which mask they want. And it might depend on their outfit or their mood, and just really making it fun. And then at the end of the day, also, making sure that you model that good behavior. I think that's all good ways to make sure that your child wears a mask. And this is so important. This is such an important topic, because we know that the pandemic isn't over. Although we wish it were over, it's not over. But we do see a light at the end of the tunnel. So many people are being vaccinated. And so we're getting there, but we definitely have to hold tight and make sure that we're wearing a mask. And then, to top that off, an extra benefit is that for us allergy sufferers out there, including myself, wearing a mask can help reduce some of those exposures. So that is good news. And so I don't see any more questions, but what I'll do is I'll just sign off now. You can always leave questions in Allergy Insider comments and things like that. And so look out for our next hot topic. Probably not next week, but the week after. We'll be going live every other week. And if you like this video, you like the content, please give us a like, and please feel free to share. And so also for additional educational resources, click the link on in the video description. And this was definitely a lot of fun. I look forward to next time. Take care and stay safe. Bye now. Until next time. Bye-bye.